What the Damn, bro. Keith Frank being your boy, bud.
Does my nose look like Ric Flair's nose?
We are the National Wrestling Clipping Alliance.
Don't look at the camera. What? What? I'm getting flustered.
You're gonna get one of these, bud. I'm Jeff.
And I'm Wes.
And we're the National Wrestling Clipping Alliance, and you are watching the NWCA podcast, the only wrestling podcast out there that doesn't just talk wrestling history, we show wrestling history. And my God, we got a massive show. Wrestling Jess is back. Thank you to Andy the Taxman for filling in last week when we talked AWA and Manitoba. Wes, you want to touch on that real quick?
Yeah, it was a great show. Andy being a little bit more of an expert at AWA and especially the Winnipeg area. So it was great to talk to him. We went at length and we even veered off, which we usually do here. Politics, Eddie Mansfield, and concussions.
Oh, nice. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Today,
I'm going to do it.
Today is unbelievable. We got, I've been playing the theme song all week. All American boys, all American boys, all week. I even got my daughter singing it. Ladies and gentlemen, please, with our Canadian content, we hit up everywhere. We hit Manitoba. We're going to skip Ontario, and we're going right to Quebec. Please welcome to the show, Jacques Rougeau. Jacques, thank you for coming on the show, my friend.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, guys, for having me. It's a pleasure, and we got a lot to talk about.
Lots to talk about.
Lots to talk about.
Before we came on, I told you that one of our things is that we show history, and I'm just gonna bust it right off the start with Raymond and Jacques. There you go. So we got tons of this stuff. Now, guys, if you miss it, we show it all in the credits. There's lots more to talk about than this kind of stuff, especially the Hogan match when Jacques beat Hulk Hogan in '97, I do believe.
Yep.
So, Jacques, you come from one of the most famous, I would say, wrestling families. Cody Rhodes' theme song even says there are more than just one royal wrestling family, and it's kind of hard to argue that. Especially on the Canadian side, when you had the Hart family out west, where you had your family in Quebec.
Sure did.
So,
we sure did. I have a lot of respect for the Hearts out west and the Rougeaus out east.
that's right.
Jacques, I was wondering, not too many people know about this, but we do talk about history, so we're looking at your family right from Eddie O'Shea onto your uncle and your dad, who your dad was one of my favorite wrestlers growing up, I might add, which is so great to see.
Hey, boo.
Yeah. And Jacques, one other thing I was looking, you're just a year younger than me when one day.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're the 14th.
Your birthday's coming up in just a couple months. That's pretty cool.
Exactly. So we look like brothers, you and me.
Yeah, same here, dude.
You want to start? Go ahead, Wes. You have a guideline there.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could talk about just quickly Johnny and your father and their wrestling careers.
It'd be my pleasure to tell you that the Rougeau family are 4 generations of wrestlers, and it started with my great uncle Eddie O'Shea, and Eddie O'Shea had a sister called Albina O'Shea, and Albina, she had 2 sons that were Johnny and Jacques Rougeau, which were my father and my uncle. And then came my brother Arma, myself. So Arma and Raymond and Jacques were the 3 brothers. And then my 3 sons did wrestling for 20 years with me in my federation in Quebec. So we have a long history, the Rougeau family. And actually, we're celebrating probably 80 years now of wrestling for the Rougeau family.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, well, it's really something that's in our genes, and I've made a passion out of it. I made it my life since I was very young, and I was lucky because wrestling was brought upon to me when I was a kid. Seeing like I was 6, 7, 8 years old, and I'd see Abdullah the Butcher and Joe Ledoux come at my house and wrestling my dad and doing promos and working angles for the next night, taking pictures for the newspaper, and I really fell in love with the business, and I was very lucky to be talented for wrestling, and because it was my passion, and but I don't know how it came upon me, but I was just good at it. I used to imitate Abdullah around the pool, and everybody would laugh. They'd see me with a sheet on my head, and I'd be going around, Bub Sheik, and I'd be like, and they'd all told me since at a young age that, hey, you're gonna be a wrestler like your dad. You're gonna be a wrestler like your dad, and it just sunk in, and I loved the attention when I was young, so I was getting all that attention. So I was lucky. I was trained by my brother Raymond, who's older than me, and Pierre Lefebvre, who and those are the two guys that trained me pretty much. And what great workers, So and in those days, you learn the basic about wrestling. You know what they say. The expression says, before you run, you got to.
That's right. Yeah.
Got to walk. It's
Gotta
wrong.
walk.
Not at our house. At our house, before you walk, you got to crawl.
Yeah.
And so they taught me how to crawl before they taught me how to walk, and then they taught me how to run, and so we learned all the basics of wrestling. How to protect your opponent, how to protect yourself, how to hit the ropes in case a rope breaks, how to just hook the rope, the third rope, and hit it sideways, and all kinds of things that they forgot over the years. But once you've learned those basic rules of wrestling, then it becomes something very precious, because all the guys, they enjoy working with you because you never hurt them. You'll have a guy in the air for a move or something, and you lose your balance or something. Well, your instinct is going to make sure that the guy in your arms lands correctly and that you fall crooked. So you protect your guy before you protect yourself. And all those things that I was lucky enough to learn. So yeah, I was very lucky to be brought up into 4 generations of wrestlers, and what a great family that my family is in wrestling. And I'm very proud of my Eddie Auger and my uncle Johnny and my father Jacques and my brothers and my sons.
Did you as a growing up in that atmosphere, did you see anything that inspired you to when you thought you might eventually become a wrestler? Like, did you always think about being scientific, or like a quote, a good guy, or was the Rougeau name always going to make you a good guy?
Yeah, you know how it goes. I'll answer it just by one just statement here is you said you were a fan of my dad, Jacques, and he was a tough guy. He was known around the world to be tough, but he was one of the most humble guys in the dressing room. Never talked, never spoke, and so just to say that my dad was my hero.
Mm-hmm.
So when your dad is your hero, you try to be like him. And I'll never be like my dad. I'll never be at the ankle of my dad. My dad was such a great man, so yeah, my uncle Johnny and my father, they prone the good values of life, and about being a good person, and generous and fair, and so for me it was like something that I was brought up around. So there was no question of me being a bad guy or breaking the rules until I became the fabulous Rougeau brothers.
Yeah.
But that was worldwide, and of course, if you go back
the best theme song of all time too. Like,
if you
I love that.
go back in Memphis, Tennessee, where I was also heel.
Yes.
I was also a heel there for Memphis, and was working for Jerry Jarrett and Jerry Lawler and those guys, and Jimmy Hart. That's when I first met him. Actually, he was in the young '80s, but we weren't together for a while until I met him again in the WWF. But that was the first time I really turned heel, and discovered that another side of wrestling. And that being a heel is something great, and it's funny because I was a guy that was very sure of myself when I was young. Like, I was confident, even maybe a little bit overconfident, maybe a little fresh too, a little smart ass. I think I knew it all, and I remember my dad telling me, like, after me being in the business 4 or 5 years professionally, he told me, he says, "Let me tell you something, son." He says, you think you're a good worker now? He says, well, let me tell you this. He says, you'll never be a good worker in this business until you worked heel. And he says, and once you work heel, because working babyface is one side, it's one side of the coin.
Yeah.
But when you work heel, it's another story, because in those days, in the 70s when I was wrestling. I started in the 80s, and it was in case, I don't know if you Wes probably know, or I don't know if Jess you know, but in those days when you'd get in a ring, it was the heels that would call the whole match.
Yeah.
It was always the heels that called the match. So the heels that were fat and ugly and all that, where people thought they were big clowns and stuff like that, they were the bright guys. They were the guys that had all the credit, but we knew it, so they were underestimated, because the heels had to feel the crowd and know the crowd and how to turn things around, when to turn things around, and the babyface would just listen. He'd put his ear and he'd listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was very much inspired by my dad, and you'll see the longer this podcast goes, that my dad is really my hero in all this.
We go ahead, Jesse.
Wes, I just wanted to show this real quick because I found this in my collection today. I really wanted to show you. You keep saying you're very proud of the 80 years and all that with your family. This is, I guess, your brother when he faced Bob Backlund for the WWF title in October 21st, 1981. And
Oh,
again,
what was it? WWF?
yeah, the WWF. It says Bob Backlund loses by disqualification to Raymond Rougeau.
Yeah,
And
I'm
that
sure.
was
Yeah, I'm sure that was a great match, except as you can see, it's a local show by International Wrestling. It's not WWF, because WWF only came to Montreal in 1985. And I know because I was the main event of that show against Samu, the great Samu, one of the Samoans. And that's the first time WWF came to Montreal in 85. So before that, they had a few guys that worked for Vince Sr., or guys that worked for New York, but it wasn't the WWF of the days that we knew.
Okay, so it was Gino kind of co-promoting.
Yeah, it was exactly that. Gino Brito and what was he called there? The Andre the Giant, and what was his friend there? The big Frank Valois.
Frank Valois,
Dino.
yeah.
They did some business with some guys in the States, and I remember them bringing him Eddie Farhat, the Sheik from Detroit, and I remember bringing him all these guys from different territories, Bobo Brazil, Igor, and those guys from. But it was all local territories at the time. Before 1985, all the local territories still exist. There was guys coming from the Serranos and the Castillo brothers from Puerto Rico. There was so different territories were exchanging talent at the time. It's only really in 1985 where everything exploded for Quebec, where Raymond and I joined the WWF, and then after that it was like Martel followed and Bravo followed, and then they went to recruit every best wrestler they had around the world in every territory. So they killed all the territories everywhere.
That's
and
right.
But before that it was all small territories.
And Gino did really well for the longest time. He hung on for a long time.
Yeah, he did.
You guys were the Rougeaus were a big part of him hanging on, and I'll bring that up a little later when I want to talk about a special match that I would really love to hear you talk about. But you were kind enough, Jacques, to send us some videos, so we're going to watch a couple of videos now from a couple of famous wrestlers. One of them's a Canadian guy, so we'll all recognize him, and the other guy, we don't even have to say anything about him. We all know who he is.
Woo! Hello, Canadian wrestlers, male and female. It's the Nature Boy, the original Rolex wearing, diamond ring wearing, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing, 16-time world champion. Wishing all you great luck at Jacques Rougeau's Wrestling Academy, the greatest wrestling academy ever known to the great country of Canada. $10,000 in prizes, man. You guys work hard. Party hard, train hard, live hard, and live like the role model Jacques Rougeau himself. God bless you. Stay strong. Make 2023 the greatest year of Jacques Rougeau's Wrestling Academy. It's the Nature Boy saying, woo! Happy New Year. Jacques, I love you, my brother. Stay strong. Woo! Hey, it's Chris Jericho here, just wishing everybody at Jacques Rougeau's Wrestling Academy in the 2023 class the best of luck. And remember, the winner gets $10,000 plus 3 months of training at the Nightmare Factory in Atlanta, Georgia, with QT Marshall, Cody Rhodes, and Billy Gunn. Do the work, and you can be a winner. Bon chance!
So, Jacques, what did you think about Mr. Flair?
Well, what a man. There's so much I could say about Ric Flair. I always have the biggest respect for that man. I remember in Atlanta when I was working there in 1980, I think 81, and Ole Anderson was the booker there, and Tommy Rich was there, and Wahoo McDaniel, and all those guys, and Thunderbolt Patterson, and Andre was coming in once in a while for the main event at the Omni in Atlanta, and we were on TBS every week. It was TBS actually was the only territory because I've been to many territories since '77, from the Tennessee to Florida to Kansas City. But when I got on TBS, it was the only territory that when you'd watch TV on the weekend, you could see it from Los Angeles to Boston. TBS was seen across the country, and I remember one day being in the dressing room, and Ric Flair was he was actually my opponent on TBS in the morning, and Ole Anderson liked me a lot. I was a great jobber. I used to do favors to everybody, and so he put me against Ric Flair to do him a favor, and I was so nervous because Ric Flair was the world champion at the time, and I was just a jabroni there, a little jobber. So I got into the dressing room at TBS, and I looked on the wall and on the booking sheet, and I saw Jerry Roberts against Ric Flair, and I had changed my name from Jacques Rougeau to Jerry Roberts because I was getting beat so bad every week after week after week. I didn't want to ruin the Rougeau name, so I had called myself Jerry Roberts when I got there, and even the boys would call me Jerry Jobber. But anyway, so I got it with Ric Flair on the TBS morning, and when I knew I was going to wrestle him, he came in the dressing room and I said, "Excuse me, Mr. Flair." I said, "I'm Jerry Roberts," and he looked at me and he says, "I know who you are." He says, I said, "Well, we're working together." I said, "What would you like to do?" "Don't worry, kid." He says, "I'll call it out there," and that was it. So I said, "Okay." Nice. So it was like a 6-minute match on TBS, seen around the country, and I'll never forget that because we got into the ring and he knew me by heart. He started calling my drop down leapfrogs, drop kicks off the second rope, my head scissors and my cross body blocks, and for 5 minutes I just kicked his ass, and it was like, in the last minute I just missed something, and boom, and then he beat me 1, 2, 3, and then I came back to the dressing room, and I was mesmerized by how he made me look good out there, and I went to see him after the match. I said, "Mr. Flair," I said, "why'd you do that?" I'm the biggest jobber in the territory here, the weakest guy on the payroll. I was like, and you made me look good for 5 minutes, and then he just sat down with me and he taught me one of the biggest lessons in the business. He just told me, he says, "Listen, kid, if I would have went out there and I would have swept the ring with you for about 6 minutes," he says, "I would have beat you." He says, "I would have beat a nobody." He says, "Now I went out there and he says, I beat somebody." Yeah. And he said, you were good, and you were great, and this, and people started believing that you had a chance to beat me, and then I beat you. He says, "That's a lot more credible than beating a nobody."
That's right.
And so from that day on, Ric Flair, he's always been an icon, an idol, and a teacher for me. And when I asked him to do a video for Wrestling Academy, for this big competition, this world competition that we're having in Canada right now, and he had followed it last year, and he said, "Jacques," he says, "be my pleasure to do a video for you." He says, "One of the greatest countries. I love Canada." And that's the video that he just did for me.
Super. And then we heard from Chris Jericho too.
Chris Jericho, it's another thing. I'm going on his ship next year. He has a cruise, Rock and Wrestling.
The Jericho cruise,
yeah. Me on the next year, so I'm going in January. Next January, I'm going to Rock and Wrestling on his cruise ship. Okay. But that's going to be fun, signing autographs, and it's like the 4 days of wrestling there on a cruise, a big cruise ship. I think like 3,000 people on that ship.
And it's a huge thing. He does it every year.
So he's Chris Jericho. I always liked that guy because I remember when I was finishing off in the WWF, he was just coming in actually, and he was very, very nice to me. And I remember during a couple of interviews, people coming back to see me at my school and say, "Hey, Jacques, he's talking about the greatest intercontinental champions, and he mentioned you. He mentioned you, Jacques. The bounty being so he made a lot of reference to me in his promos and stuff like that. So I always like Chris Jericho. Anybody who talks good about me, I like them. There's so many few. There's just so few people that talk good about me. So when they do, I like them a lot.
Good. We're just going to take a second out here to give a shout out to one of our sponsors, Grand River Tea. They've been our sponsor from day one. And don't forget that by typing NWCA at checkout, you can get a beautiful 15% reduction on your price tag of having some tea. And I'd just like to give a quick shout out to Christine Lombardi. If you are watching this, and you should, thank you very much. So yeah,
It's Christine, Steve Lombardi's brother, or
some lady who ordered some tea and we got a discount. Jacques, I got to say one thing here. I was a huge fan of your dad's from before the Grand Prix came onto the circuit, and then the all the battles in between, and then the marrying after, and I followed it all the way through. It was great to see from watching TV in Toronto, but the Saint Jean-Baptiste massacre will forever stand out in my mind. I'll never forget it. What an angle, what a great feud that was.
It was amazing, taking the Rougeau brothers being acknowledged for so many years, and then here comes the Garvin brothers, Jimmy Garvin and Ronnie Garvin with Precious as their manager, and we shot that angle. That was the most talked angle in tag team in the history in Quebec in the old days, and because it was such a success the way it was done, everybody participated so well from the time that we put it together. Where Raymond and I, our first match against the Garvin brothers, where Precious came in front of me before the bell rang, and she just sprayed my eyes with a can of spray and blinded me. And before the match ever started, and then they started beating my brother Raymond up, both of them, and my brother was fighting like a devil, to try fight both of them. And next thing you know, they got the best of my brother. So my dad comes in to try and save my brother. And then finally they put him in a Boston Crab, and Ronnie Garvin comes off the top rope with a knee in his back. They put him on a stretcher. So there's no match. They never had a match. Yeah. And then it was almost like a riot that night. And then about a month later, it was the Saint Jean-Baptiste Day, the national Quebec National Day, and we had the rematch where, if I may say it just like that, we kicked ass. And it was like we came in, and boy, that was one of the most. The people were so proud of the Rougeau brothers, me and Raymond, against the Garvins. They got beat up bad that match, but it was like the rematch and the revenge of the Rougeau brothers, and we took that match around the whole province, in every city and every place, and we sold out the biggest records everywhere, and it was so fun to work with these guys. Jimmy Garvin, what an artiste. And they're so easy to work with in the ring. And Ronnie Garvin, a little bit more rugged. That's why they call him Rugged Ronnie Garvin. Yeah. But so nice to work, just a little snug, not stiff, just a little snug, a little bit like Greg the Hammer Valentine. You get in the ring and, you feel like he's there, a few chops here and there. They won't kill you, but they may split a few veins on your chest there,
yes.
But it was the kind of work that I like at the time, because I was a little snug too. When I got with guys that were snug, I could get snug too, and it made good matches, because when you'd pop your opponent, they could hear it, they could feel it from ringside, so it was amazing to work with these guys.
You guys, you're doing your job, and it only creates more atmosphere, creates more tension or more whatever to make the people who are paying want to come back and see the next one.
Sure. And I remember going into that second match. There's a few times in my life that I could honestly say, I've been in shape all my life. I've always took care. I'm 63 years old now, and I still work out every day. But there's certain peaks in your career that you really get in shape for a certain time, and that was one of them. Okay. And I was doing so much cardio because I knew that our match was only going to last like 15, 16 minutes, but it's going to be non-stop. And people have no idea how much cardio it takes to do a non-stop 16 minutes, like from hitting, running, bumping, hitting, running, bumping. And it's like, think of the hockey players that go on the ice for a minute or 45 seconds, and they get off. So you go into the ring 16 minutes, and you never stop. And it was like, so it was I was like, that I must have been 26 years old, maybe at the prime of my cardio. And I was so proud because I was getting on that life cycle in the gym, putting at level 24, and then doing that 24 minutes and just riding the bike to the maximum. And
Cool.
and so yeah. So it's good memories for me. And you know what the funniest thing about it is we're talking in 1985, so we're talking about like 30 years later, almost now. Almost 30 years later. And I just got off the phone this week with Ronnie Garvin, and I'm going to go be spending the winter with him in Florida, where he's got a mobile home. Next year, I'm going with my RV to spend the whole 4 months with him in the
Nice.
same park. With
Nice.
Ronnie Garvin. He wants to take me fishing, so
Okay.
so we'll be talking about those potatoes we used to give each other.
I bet. I bet. Jesse, can you add anything?
One thing is the international wrestling. You were 1981, I guess, teaming with your brother.
Yeah, pretty much so. Yeah.
So I got just a couple things I just want to quickly show you before we move on from the history of your family and everything. Because a lot of these things, it's so interesting to me. Because the one thing between me and Wes is that there is a 30-year age gap. So he's teaching me everything now, and I teach him everything that's going on now. So it's kind of like, so it's cool to go, and for me to see names like this is just a French clipping I pulled with your brother on it. But I mean, like Pat Patterson is on here.
Yeah, me and
Right.
me and Raymond, we worked so much against Pat Patterson and Pierre Lefebvre, and I don't know if Pierre Lefebvre is on that picture. If you see Mad Dog Lefebvre,
Yeah,
if he's
Mad Dog is there. I'll put it a little closer there for you.
yeah, so yeah, yeah, you're looking at all the guys that we used to work with for sure.
And then here's another one with you guys teaming up with Mad Dog Vachon. Now that would have been a banger.
Yeah. Well, it was a scratchy one, I'll tell you that much, because a lot of scratches with Mad Dog, but. A lot of people, it's funny because a lot of people ask me if I ever wrestled with Mad Dog, so they'd be happy to see this when I share this on my Facebook. That yes, I did work a few times, and thank God I was with him as a partner, not as opponent.
Yes.
There is one more words that I found you working. Well, first, I got everything scattered here because I'm never organized, but I'm sure you remember this.
Let me see that. Is that my son? Oh yeah, that's my match against Hogan, isn't it?
Yes, in '97. So we plan on covering this card later in the year on our '90s tour, because right now in our histories tour we're in the '70s. So after this episode, we're going to Ontario to do the '50s, and then we're going to the '80s and then the '90s. So we are going to cover that later this year. But I have that, and I will send it to you when I have a chance.
Right.
One more thing here, August 24th. 1981, another one here with your family on it.
Yep, I can't see there if I'm on there or not. It's a little that's Smirnoff.
Yeah, it's a little blurry. Raymond and Edward Carpentier and Gino Brito. So it's your brother teaming right here. But it's cool to know that all this stuff is still available and people like me just collect and gather. And
there's something you got to know is my brother Raymond. He was a guy who didn't like to travel that much. He like we'd tag in the summer and stuff like that. But me, come September, I'd always take off to another country or another tour or somewhere gone. I'd go all winter long. I just wanted to go learn from different people in different places, different territories. Well, my brother wanted to stay at home, so every Monday night he'd go to the Paul Sauvé Arena and wrestle in Montreal, and a couple of shots, maybe another shot during the week. But it was very slow in the winter wrestling. There wasn't too many shots, and. So when I come back in the spring, then I'd be teaming up with him, and I like that because it was funny because that's what made me very popular at home. Because I remember in '78 when I left I went to Mexico City and La Lucha Libre, you know, and let me tell you something, it's a whole new different ball game over there. You know, it's like a fast pace, acrobatic, high altitude. You know, you get in shape over there. Let me tell you something. And then when you tag team, they don't tag to come into the ring. The guy who takes a bump out, the other partner's got to come in. And I used to be yelled at by the partner so many times, Roro, Roro, handale, handale, like, you know, get your ass in the ring. You know? And I was saying, well, I'm waiting for the tag, you know, but there ain't no tags in Mexico, like, you know. But the funniest thing is that I learned a lot of acrobatic moves there. And so what was fun is like the people that used to see my brother and used to see the Gino and the Dino and the guys that were there week after week, they never improved. It was always the same kind of match that they give. So when I disappeared for 3, 4, 5 months, and I'd come back, and I'd always make sure that I watched the other guys' matches to what I could steal, you know. So when I'd come home, I'd always come home with a new repertoire, you know, like as the guy go for a backdrop, I come around, I do a backflip, land on my feet, and give a drop kick, you know, and boom, and people go like, oh my God, like, you know, it's like they never seen that before, and so that's what really helped me get over in Quebec pretty strong, because I always left the territories in the fall and come back in the spring. So I always came back with new luggage, you know, new. So that was something that it reminds me when I see all those cards that you have where I'm not on it in the 80s, late 70s or early 80s. It's because I was on the road.
Yeah, but I find that when I talk to people, so we had Paige Von Hess on the show, and she always said that Kurt Von Hess wanted to stay close to home. He didn't really like to travel. I found out Elio DiPaolo, he from the 50s and 60s, he usually stayed around Toronto and Buffalo and stuff because he didn't like to travel. So it's kind of I'm kind of noticing now that I talk to everybody that a lot of people, it's either you loved hitting the road or you didn't hit the road, right?
Exactly.
Like yourself, you're like the saying, you got to go learn a new hold, right? Loser leaves town or whatever, right?
You just want to give a new flair, a new flame, a new impression when you, and the only way to grow is to bring some new stuff. It's like that's the way it is in the business. It's like you gotta, you know, you gotta keep growing. You can't stay at the same level all the time, because after a while, it's people, they know ahead of time what you're gonna do. They called the shots before you did it, you know, and that's what I liked about surprising the people, like, you know, and just
Now, my final question. Sorry, Wes. My final question before we get into his the wrestling academy with him. I have to know, because Jim Cornette said it, so on his podcast, that the Mountie was banned in Canada because it looked bad on Canadians or something like that. Is that true?
Yeah, it was. The RCMP from Canada sent an injunction against the WWF. They didn't want me to wrestle on TV anymore because I was giving a bad reputation to the Mounties. And so that's what really killed my character, because what would happen is we do TV tapings in the States, and as we're doing TV tapings, they tape for the whole world. So, but the fact that they couldn't just change one match during the whole TV tapings, so they'd start taking me off TV, you know, when they were doing the TV taping. So my character just kind of died off, you know. That's and it was so bad. But you know, today I look at it and I think that you know, it's a knife with couteau à double tranchant, like we say in French. It's like it cut sides, and like, you know, it's good and it's bad. The reason why they did that is because I was doing my job right, you know, and then if I wasn't doing my job right, they wouldn't have bothered. But you know, maybe they didn't like the fact when I did those vignettes where the guy was lost and he asked me on my horse how to get back to the U.S. and I take the front end of my horse like this and I tell him like, hey, this part always points to Canada, and then I'd go in the back, I'd lift the tail up and I'd say this part always points to the USA. You know, and I think that's what burned my ass. That's what burned me with the RCMP. But it was like it was giving a bad image. But I'll tell you what, around the world, the Mountie was hot. I was working against Randy Macho Man for the belt in England. You go to Europe, they love the Mountie. You go to the States, I'm doing Comic-Cons around the world right now as the Mountie. Everybody that comes to see me in Comic-Cons, which I'm doing about 10 a year now, and it's like all around the globe. And it's funny because people come up to me and they have all these dolls and these pictures, the figurines, wrestling figurines with me and the Intercontinental title, and it's so funny because I only had it for 2 days, and I only had the title for 2 days. I took it from Brett and I gave it to Rowdy Piper, but everywhere I go, a lot of people say, "Oh, the Intercontinental champ," and then they remember my jailhouse match against Big Boss Man when I went to jail.
Un petit peu, right?
Sorry.
Un petit peu champion.
Yes, super, but I left my mark because it's funny.
Yeah.
Everywhere I go in Comic Cons, everywhere, every promoter that's promoting me or something, they always have pictures on the table with me and the belt, and it's amazing. And I'm saying, hey, that character was awesome, and the match, the jailhouse match, where I spent the night in jail there in New York at precinct. That was something that you guys have no idea how popular that match was. Or when I go in countries and I go there, and that's the first thing they bring up to me. I'm the Mountie, I'm handsome, brave. And then they bring up, of course, I got to tell you the truth. We don't like heavy metal. We don't like rock and roll. All we like to listen to is Barry Manilow. Hey, we're all American. My 2 theme songs are actually some of I think in the 10 best songs ever in the WWF.
Okay.
All American Boys
So
kills me. I love it.
Must have been doing something right. But to be honest with you, I owe it all to Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart was the greatest manager of all times. Until today, I still think he is. And I don't care if you talk about Cornette, if you talk about Bobby Heenan, you talk about Slick, you talk about them all. Nobody is a better manager than Jimmy Hart. And I'll explain myself if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, by all means.
Jimmy Hart, not only he produced music for his talent, for all the talent in WWF, Jimmy Hart had suits made to the image of his talent. He had all his coats. He had one with the flags, the French flags. He had one with the Valentine beefcake. He had one with the Nasty Boy. He had everything. Every time he had a guy come in, he had a suit made that matched the guy's character. And he's the only manager, the only one. If you look at any interview he's done over the 50 years that he's done it, that he comes in on a TV and he'll go like this. Hey, let me tell you something. My man here, contrary to every manager that I've always known, is like, hey, I know what I'm doing. I'm the brain. I'm this, I'm this, and I'm that. And my man's Jimmy never spoke about himself. He was always putting the spotlight on his character, on his man. So and 1 year I had a chance to work with him twice, with Raymond, my brother, and with as the Mountie. And I could tell you, when you have a manager that's so generous of his time, and that he's so good and colorful, he's giving it all to you, as a character, as a person, me as a wrestler, you could never be in a better position.
Yeah.
Did you ever work with him in Memphis?
I sure did. I worked with him against him. He was actually with Coco Beware at the time, and it wasn't his name, Coco Beware. It was another name he had, Sugar Brown, Sugar Brown, or Brown Sugar. Anyway, he was
Sweet Brown Sugar.
Sweet Brown Sugar, exactly. And so he was managing there, and we had a few confrontations there, but with Dutch Mantel and a few guys there, but yeah, that was the old days. Holy shit! But anyway, it's. You're going back far there. So I've known Jimmy Hart a long time. And another thing, too, about Jimmy Hart, I'm just going to say this, that Jimmy Hart, I traveled the world with him. And it was so fun because all the guys, when we'd land in different airports, different places, the only thing they'd be looking at is, okay, where is the new girls? Where is the drugs? Where is the gyms? Where is where Jimmy, he'd never go out in a nightclub, and neither did I. We didn't go out in nightclubs. We were I was in the morning, and I was an hour before my place where I had to be. Like if I had at 8 o'clock, if my flight was at 9 o'clock, I was in the airport at 7. It was like, if I had an interview to do or a personal appearance to do at 10 o'clock, I was there at 9:30. And Jimmy was the same. He was so punctual. He was so punctual. So when you work with a guy like that, that's always on time, never in trouble, never caught nothing bad, then that's another reason why I'm just saying that Jimmy Hart will always be the greatest manager of all time.
You're gonna be successful no matter what, right?
Yeah.
You could have You know, it's like putting the chances on your side. You know, you could be a better talent than some others, but if you're, excuse my language, but if you're a fuck up, you know, then it's not going to last.
That's right.
Wes, before we dive into all that, the Academy, do you Grumpy Bear vinyl next on your little thing or what?
I do not have Grumpy Bear, no.
Well, we got to bring them up. Grumpy Bear Vinyl is the only place that you can grab your National Wrestling Clipping Alliance merch. Boom, fresh tee right out of the dryer. T-shirts, sweaters, we have cups. Check out Grumpy Bear Vinyl. Our kind of thing is it's another woman entrepreneur. So that's number 2. By all means, check Grumpy Bear Vinyl out on Facebook. Email them at grumpybearvinyl@gmail.com. And we have all the details Johnny's going to throw up. Again, bomb shirt. Check them out. All the proceeds when you purchase this, some of the proceeds, not all, go back into the show as we try to grow and be the #1 history podcast out there.
Yes.
Wes,
Yep.
big time.
Talk about history. Let's make history now. Let's talk about Wrestling Academy.
We're ready.
That's what
So
we're
we're
doing
gonna
right now.
watch the video, Jacques, and then we'll come right back after the video.
So check out this video.
The winner that will be going to All Elite Wrestling and to the Nightmare Factory is going to be Jessica. The winner is Jeremy Crawford. I'm going to go with Matt Black and Dylan Davis.
En 2022, Lutte Académie de Jacques Rougeau a couronné 4 personnes gagnantes avec 5 000 $ et 3 mois at the Nightmare Factory. In 2022, Jacques Rougeau's Wrestling Academy had 4 winners of $5,000 each and 3 months at the Nightmare Factory. Mais cette année, c'est beaucoup plus d'argent et toute la planète lutte en parle. This year, it's way more money and the whole wrestling planet is talking about it.
Hey, Julie, how you doing? $10,000 Canadian American. Nitro Girls.
Is it true? $1,000 for the winner?
Whoa, $10,000?
Yeah.
Wow.
Steiner.
Hey, $10,000?
Yeah, man.
Who?
Hey, Jake.
Howdy.
How you doing?
$10,000?
Yeah.
$10,000?
That's boy.
Hey, $10,000? 3 months at the Nightmare Factory?
Yeah.
Oh, that's nasty.
Hey, Molly. $10,000? Yeah. Hey, Ted, how you doing?
$10,000?
Yeah, $10,000. Hey, Alicia.
Hey, the mountain?
Hi, how you doing?
Wait. $10,000?
Yeah.
And 3 months at the Nightmare Factory?
Yeah.
Yes, this year, 3 winners will bring home $10,000 each. Oui, cette année, les 3 personnes gagnantes remporteront 10 000 $ chacune et 3 mois au and 3 months at the Nightmare Factory. Qui seront les personnes gagnantes de 2023? Who will be the winners in 2023? They'll have to do the work. Thank you to our champion sponsors. Merci à nos champions commanditaires. Lutte Académie de Jacques Rougeau débute le 7 mai à Montréal. Achetez vos billets sur le site web du Club Soda. Jacques Rougeau's Wrestling Academy starts in Montreal on May 7th. Get your tickets on the Club Soda website. We'll be there. Will you? Nous serons là. Y serez-vous?
C'est François Babin, Alexandre Guilbeault, Yves Nantais, Junior Boursier, du band Atomic Train. Et voici Lutte Académie 2023, notre chanson Playground!
Lutte Académie 2023 de Jacques Rougeau. C'est la plus grande compétition de lutte professionnelle au monde. Et ça approche rapidement. Ça commence avec la première partie des quarts de finale, le 7 mai, au Club Soda de Montréal. Et il y a des gros prix en jeu. En fin de compétition, une femme et 2 hommes gagneront 10 000 $ chacun, ainsi que 3 mois à la prestigieuse école de lutte de Nightmare Factory pour recevoir un entraînement de haut niveau avec QT Marshall, Cody Rhodes et Billy Gunn. Mondialement, on parle de Lutte Academy dans un nombre grandissant de balado-diffusion et on n'en revient pas du niveau de compétition. On part sanguin avec la collision de 2 géants. 6 pieds 10, 300 livres, Giant Orion.
Jesse V, when you finally get in the ring with me, that's when you're gonna realize that dream that you've been chasing for so long has become a nightmare.
Il fera face à un gars de 6 pieds 4, 275 livres. Punch Jesse V.
Giant Orion, don't underestimate what a man will do for $10,000. Because I don't care how tall you are, because when I pick you up and I slam you back down on that mat, you're only going to be looking up at me, Clutch Jesse V.
Juste ça, ça vaut le prix d'admission. Mais ce n'est pas tout. Il y a 5 autres combats explosifs sur la carte. Dans la division féminine, on va en avoir de toutes les couleurs, alors que Malicia Luciferia fera face à Amy Crimson. Dans un combat de 3 contre 3, l'arène va trembler, alors que le Salsa King, John Gonzalez, s'alignera avec KL Shock et Jefferson James pour affronter The King Brandon Bright, Eli Surge et Tomer CD Shalom. Vous en voulez de l'action? En voici d'autres. La bataille de l'Ouest, ça va se passer entre Relentless Riley Rose et Zoe Stagger. Un autre combat par équipe, bien entendu, c'est celui qui verra Chad Daniels et Maverick Wheeler affronter Genesis, Johnny North et Magnum McLaren avec Big Daddy Diamond dans leur coin. Ça va être malade. Puis j'en ai un autre pour vous, The Data Spot in the World. Carl Zachary se mesurera au géant de l'Acadie, Gabriel Savage, avec son gérant, Michel Plourde, qui passeront à la 2e ronde et qui s'en iront à la maison. Lors de la semi-finale en août, QT Marshall luttera pour la première fois à Montréal contre l'un des concurrents éliminés. Si on peut faire tout ça, c'est parce qu'on a des champions comme commanditaires. Merci beaucoup. C'est le billet le plus convoité en mai. Achetez le vôtre par l'entremise du site web du Club Soda. Pour tous les détails, consultez notre site web. Lutte Académie 2023 de Jacques Rougeau. Ça commence le 7 mai. Ne manquez pas ça.
To my playing ground.
So what do you guys think of the video?
That's fantastic, Jacques. It's interesting to see that the excitement it's just crazy exuberant, and I'm so happy for you. And it's just so interesting to see a Canadian guy doing something so important.
You know, what's I think what's the most amazing out of this for me is like being a trampoline for a lot of young talent to, last year we had this competition. I started this competition last year where we had videos. I asked all the independent wrestlers across Canada to send videos in, and we're going to make this a reality show where we're going to have some voting, and we're going to have like go into the ring and go into the quarterfinals, semifinals, have people vote, and then just make it a reality show. And it was, and we only had, it's funny because last year we had 4 winners that won $5,000 each, and they spent 3 months at the Nightmare Factory in the fall, being trained 5 times a week by QT Marshall, Billy Gunn, and Cody Rhodes, who was just main event in WrestleMania. And they were trained, they're trained by these guys, and it was such a success. Plus, QT Marshall gave us a nice gift from his school. I'm doing this project with him personally. And then he added that when AEW came to Toronto this summer, last summer, I should say, for the first time, well, my 4 winners of Wrestling Academy were on Dark and the Rampage.
Which one? Because I was there.
You were there?
I was there both nights.
Well, watch the first match of the evening. It's Jessica Black and Jeremy Prophet. It was a mixed tag team match. And
Yes.
those are winners from Wrestling Academy in Quebec. And then there was Matt Black, who's from Ontario, and then there was Chris Dillon from the Maritimes. And they're all four. And then there was Jesse V that was chose also
Yes.
to Vince Arago to chosen. So I had 5 of my academy, Wrestling Academy participants that QT Marshall chose and brought them on there. Plus, they all had a figurine, a wrestling figurine done by Zashman in Australia, a company from Australia. So it was a dream come true to all of them. And it was such a big success. But unfortunately, last year, we had like 40 inscriptions, 41, and there was like only 19 from Canada and 21 from Quebec. There was a lot of haters out there, a lot of people trying to destroy this project. And so nobody believed in it also. Nobody believed that 4 wrestlers going to win $5,000. You know, it's like way, hey. And so when it all happened, so we threw the project again this year in the fall. And this year, instead of having like 19 inscriptions from Canada, we had like a 60. So it was like we had 71 inscriptions this year. The greatest talent from Canada. We actually have Chad Daniels from Winnipeg that came close last year to winning. He's coming again this year. He's coming strong. He'll be in May 7th when it all starts in 3.5 weeks from now. And May 7th. The Club Soda, he's in there too this year. But there's so much talent. There's and the 3 winners this year, because we only have 3 winners this year instead of 4, but the 3 winners are going to win $10,000 each. And so we found sponsors that are paying $20,000 of plane tickets, and they're paying like the hotels, and they're paying like 3 winners $10,000. And QT Marshall is absolutely magnificent in this competition, because contrary of last year, where QT came in on a giant screen at the Club Soda in Montreal from Atlanta in his home to choose the last 4 winners. You know, after he was seeing the matches live from Montreal in Atlanta, and then after each match, he'd come in and say, "Okay, I like your charisma, I like your ability in the ring, I like your dress code, the way you're marketing yourself, and I like your timing, but I'm going to choose you." And then you'd see somebody crumble to the floor and somebody jump up in the air. So he came into the finals last year, and he did that, and he liked the project. I remember the next day when I called him, I said, "Hey, how did you like the experience?" And he told me, he said, "Jacques, I loved it." He said, "Are we doing it again this year?" And then I said, "Yes, sir, we are." So there we are. I went to the Nightmare Factory to see the guys and the lady practice, Jessica Black, and then practice I was there in Atlanta, went to see him, and couldn't believe how generous Billy Gunn, Cody Rhodes, and QT Marshall are with our talent. They're just bumping and taking bumps and training them 5 days a week. It's like it's an amazing opportunity for 3 months to be taking in like that for free. They're giving it to the Wrestling Academy winners. And this year, plus that, QT Marshall told me that after the last year, he told me, he says, "Jacques," he says, "next year, when you come in the fall to see the winners," he says, "I want to be there to choose the contestants." And he says, "I want to be there in the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and the finals on the giant screen. Not only the finals, I want to follow the whole competition." And then he just came up a month ago by telling me, like, "Jacques, why don't we give them a little candy?" He says, "The ones that are, that we came up with that idea, and I really like it." He says, like on May 7th and June 4th, it's the quarterfinals. And then July, there's nothing. Then August, the best 10, because there's 20 in May and 20 in April, 20 in June. So there's 20 in May on the 7th of May, and on the 4th of June, there's 20, but there's only 10 that are going to remain on each show. And those 10 are going to go against the 10 in August, each other. And then in September, QT Marshall is going to come to Montreal, not on the giant screen, but he's going to come to Montreal, and he's going to wrestle somebody that he chose during the whole competition. He's going to come and wrestle with them in Montreal, and it's his first time wrestling in Montreal. So not only he's going to choose the winners, but he's going to wrestle against one that was eliminated before in the months before that in the competition. And you know, if I'm a wrestler, you know, I remember when I started wrestling, my dad told me 2 things. He says, to be a successful wrestler, it takes 2 things. It really takes 2 things when you come down to it. It takes knowing the right people and being at the right place at the right time. And now you're going 3 months at the Nightmare Factory, where you have Billy Gunn and QT Marshall that are AEW, and you have Cody Rhodes that's WWE, and all 3 of them are working together to make you a better wrestler. You know, what a better place to be if you're a wrestling, an independent wrestler
right.
in the whole world. So now this competition, the podcast I'm doing with you, I've done about 40 podcasts in the last year. I've done Australia and Europe. I'm doing them all over the world. So the whole world of wrestling is watching this competition. This has become the biggest competition on the planet right now, where 3 winners win $10,000 plus 3 months at the Nightmare Factory.
That's
Now,
amazing.
I'm gonna explain something to Wes because he has never been to Quebec to watch wrestling. So I did 3 shows last year in Quebec. I went to different promotions last year. I was in Sur Saint Jean Rougeau, and then I checked out another one by a guy named the Raccoon, who's out there in Quebec. The Quebec scene, and a lot of my homies, shout out to Chops and Adam, who were just there for IWS, they will agree that Quebec is a whole other scene. The crowds are louder, the crowds are wilder. If I had to choose between an Ontario and Quebec show, I would rather go to Quebec.
I don't want to do that because you know what? In this competition this year, out of the 34 that we kept out of the 71 inscriptions, there must be about 11 from Ontario.
Okay.
You know,
Jesse V's from Toronto. I do know that. I've met Jeremy Prophet. He's really good.
Let me give you some matches that we got coming up on May 7th, just to give you. Tell me if
Yeah,
you know
let's
some.
hear it. 'Cause I'm stoked because I'll know the names.
So the first match of the evening is Cal Zachary against Gabrielle Savage. He's a new guy, and then there's Amy Crimson from Ontario. She's wonderful. She was in the competition last year against Militia from Quebec, and then you got Chad Daniels with Matt Wheeler. You got Winnipeg with the Maritimes against Johnny Genesis North from Montreal and Magnum McLaren. And Magnum McLaren, I like him a lot. I've been following him because when he shoots, he never misses, and that's his logo. And he's got a. Then you got guys like John Gonzalez, K.L. Shock, and Jefferson James going against Ellie Surge, Tomer Sidi Shalom, and Brandon Bright, and that's going to be a 3 against 3. And then you got the battle of the Albertans. You got the relentless Riley Rose against Zoe Zager. It's 2 girls, one from Edmonton, and I think they're from Edmonton and Calgary. But those girls are just awesome. And then in the last match is Jesse V from Ontario, which is going against Giant Orion, which is 6'9". And it's like so. And then on the 4th, the next show in June 4th. Let me give you some other names. This is amazing. You got the Lion Bobby Sharp. I don't know if you know him. He's a veteran. He's awesome. He's from out west against Sean Moore. I don't know if you know Sean Moore. He's awesome. I think videos, the inscription videos are incredible. And then take this in. There's a Nikita with Smiley Miley against Casey Rufio Spinelli. Casey Spinelli and Brendan. And we got this new girl there. Zunga or something like that. She just came in because Zunda Lee and just because of an injury. And then you got in another match you got Jesse Bieber and Tad Owett. I don't know if you know those guys. Carl Gibson and Bjorn Hacken. And then you got
Carl Jepson's one of my favorite guys.
Then you got Michael Richard Blay, which is a veteran. He's from Calgary, I believe, against Cody Brown. I don't know if you know Cody Brown, but he was in Mexico. He's been around the world. And then you got Kat Von Ease, which from out west also. She's going against a Canadian girl, a Montreal Canadian girl, Shikaka. And then you got Stephen Maines, a guy from Montreal, against a guy from Ontario, again, Matthias Meyer. So we got all these.
I know Matthias. Matthias is a good kid.
Listen, this talent in here is going to be so amazing because I honestly believe it's some of the best talent in Canada that are going to be performing. And you know what's amazing about this contest? I'll tell you what's the most amazing for me. You know, you guys may not know this, but I had a bad history with the British Bulldogs, you know, an encounter in the dressing room.
Yeah.
And it's
I've seen Dark Side.
They were big bullies. And you know, Dynamite Kid was a big bully. And long story short, I don't want to get into it, but I had to save face. But I had some bullying done to me, and it marked me so much, that bullying in my life, that after I left the WWF, For 25 years, I've done every school in the province of Quebec and some in Ontario to go teach the kids how to fight bullying without using violence.
Yep.
And that was and when I did my shows for the last 20 years before COVID, I had my own company in Quebec. All my shows, there was no tables, there was no chairs, there was no girls in my shows, there was no sexual content. It wasn't a match full of kicks and punches. It was all based on high-flying acrobatic, charisma, ability in the ring, storytelling, and family orientated, where 6 years old kids could come and watch this match with the parents and have fun, because all the shows I was doing, the guys that I had in my school and that I produced, also a guy like Kevin Owen, who was a kid when he came to me, for 4 years I taught him how to work, and he was 14 years old. And a lot of guys I took like that, Jeremy Prophet, a lot of guys I took like that. I couldn't name them all, the ones that I produced. But they all were doing shows where they practiced 2-3 months ahead of time before getting into the arenas. So when they got into the arenas, the show was first class. And then in that show, you had the mummy against Spider-Man, you had the midget with the giant, and you had it was family orientated, where kids and family would laugh and have fun and good storylines. And it was back to basics, where the guy who would receive a drop kick from somebody, he wouldn't be standing up before the guy who gave it. And everybody was selling, everybody meant something. Less was more. And so all these shows and all this, the way it's happening, it's like that in Wrestling Academy. There's no violence, there's no sexual content, there's no swearing. If you swear in this competition in front of the 400 people in the Club Soda, you're out of the competition. It's because just as of now, I went to this morning, I got a call from a school that I already gave a conference, and they're buying 50 tickets for these kids to come and watch Wrestling Academy on the 7th of May. 50 kids from one school. So it's like, so what it is, it's like, it's almost like going back in time. It's like most of the crowd that I have, that I sell tickets to, that I go see the companies, I go talk to the big bosses of the companies, said, hey, listen, this is how it is in my show. It's accessible for kids. And when kids have fun, the parents have fun. And then so what it is also, it's like all virgins coming, because it's almost like you take a headlock and you take a hip toss or something, and the guy sells a hip toss. It's the first time that the kid's ever seen it, because it's the first time they've been to wrestling. So for them, it's like, wow, like, so they're impressed with less, and so everything means something. So all this talent that's coming in, they're aware of that, and I told them that. So now they got to take out their ability and their charisma. They have to do an interview before getting in the ring. They have to do an interview that's smart and intelligent, because QT Marshall's watching. And if you watch QT Marshall wrestle, he's an old school kind of guy. He goes into his match.
Actually,
He sells. He likes to work the crowd. He likes to get like the Mountie used to do, and the fabulous Rougeau brothers like to do. He likes to make the crowd mad, and so that makes it a great show. So what we're producing now in Wrestling Academy, it's absolutely amazing. I want to give a lot of credit to my girlfriend that's behind me and all this. I want to give credit to all our sponsors. If you go on my website, wrestling-academy.ca, if you could put that on the bottom when we're all finished.
We definitely will.
Academy.ca, you'll see all the videos of the contestants. You'll see the old timers like Ric Flair before and Chris Jericho, but wait till you see all the others that are there. There's Bret Hart, Undertaker. There's King Tonga. There's Warlord. There's Lanny Poffo, God bless him. There's the Bushwhackers, God bless Butch. There's a lot of the guys, Jake the Snake, the videos. Wait till you see all the guys that do videos. You won't believe it. If you go on wrestling-academy.ca, just click on the picture, and then Double J Jeff Jarrett's there, and you'll see them all. All my friends that I used to work with, they're all wishing good luck to the Canadian wrestlers in this academy, because you know what? If you make it through my academy, then you could become any kind of wrestler. Because you know what? You got to learn how to crawl before you walk, and you got to learn how to walk before you run. And that's what this academy is, really, is taking the best talent that could go and get the crowd on their feet without what we call getting cheap heat. It's easy to look at someone on the side of the ring and say, hey, fatso, and this and that, so they get mad. That's cheap heat.
Yeah.
But if you get some heat in the ring because you're cheating behind the referee's back and he doesn't catch you, Or, if you're doing like we used to do, like the way I used to work, where like people are really mad because the referee's doing a great job, but he doesn't have eyes behind the head.
Yeah.
So, so everything you do is legal in front of the referee, but you cheat when you can. But if it's like, that's good wrestling. That's good entertainment.
Entertainment.
Now, I can fully respect that because my daughter is only 5, and I can never take her to shows. I can only take her to two, Oshawa Wrestling and PWE, but I can't take her to the Toronto scene or anything because it's F this, F that.
The Club Soda in Montreal on May 7th. You won't believe how much fun you'll have with your daughter.
Yeah, she so far she gets a little nervous because I don't tell her everything, obviously, right? But yeah, she's getting there. She's getting there.
Can't tell the tricks of the magician,
Yes.
No.
That's right.
One thing about your academy too, I want to bring up. You bring up names like Jeremy Prophet, Carl Jepson. A lot of these guys I have seen. I was at the AEW. I do know who QT is. Now I want to bring up what Bret Hart literally just said the other day. He come out in public and he said that the new wrestling is really just spot heaven. And like you said, where is the selling? And so a prime example of this was on Monday Night Raw with Kevin Owens. They did work on the knee, and then what did he do? He stand up and he buckled yeah, it's a lingering injury because they worked on that knee 10 minutes prior. Do you find that and today they lose a little bit of that art form?
I'm going to disappoint you so much, you're not going to believe it, but I'm going to go ahead and let you have it before I finish this podcast. 30 years ago, I had a falling out with Vince McMahon.
Mm-hmm.
When that happened, I turned the TV off.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't watched a show in 30 years. Not one of them. Not one show. So I don't know the talent. I don't know anything. I just know what I hear. And what I hear is what you're saying, like everybody's saying. There's less is more doesn't exist anymore.
That's right.
It's everybody's trying acrobatic things higher. The guy who gives the drop kick is the guy who receives the drop kick. He's standing up before the guy who gave it, and that's just an expression, but it's the truth. So I haven't seen it. I can only say one thing. If Kevin Owen did that, it's because I'm the one who taught him how to do it. And if he kept it, he's smart. Because, so many times in the ring, and I explained that to my guys, you get hurt, guy works a part of your body, and then you start doing a comeback in the middle of the ring. You better sell that part of the body you were hurting during your comeback. Because, it's going to give you credibility, and it's going to make more sense to the people. That it's all making sense. And I was talking to Brett in England the other day. I was in England with him and Shawn Michaels actually a couple of years back, and we were reminiscing the good old days while we're signing an autograph at a WrestleFest or something down there. And Brett was telling me, Jacques, he says, you wouldn't believe it, man. He says, I went to do a show with Vince, and he says that they gave me a sheet, and I had to learn everything I was going to say in the promo. And he says, it's not me anymore. It's like they want me to read something and show like an actor, something like that. And me, forget it. I told him, I said, I would never get over because, I could only be myself. I'm only good being myself. Like when I did an interview, so many times I was doing an interview and I'd go like this, I'd be with Mean Gene Okerlund or something. And I'd go ahead and say something. And, well, Mean Gene, hey, stop stepping on my foot. And then I'd come back and I'd acknowledge the reality of my thoughts, of the deepest thoughts I had, but I was so credible because I believed in my character. I believed in the person I was. But I'll give you another example. René Lévesque, he was a guy a prime minister in Quebec that wanted to separate from Canada. René Lévesque, and they made a story on him, and my uncle Johnny was his right-hand man in real life, and his bodyguard and right-hand man. And so they wanted me to do this mini-series, like on Netflix, something like that, but it wasn't Netflix, it was on TV. And so they had me come over for not even an audition. They thought I was so good on TV, I didn't need the audition. And they realized that when they gave me a sheet to be somebody else, I was the shits. I was horrible because I can't be someone else. I can only be me. I can only be me. And but I believe in my character and myself, and that's one thing about Vince that I got to give him credit. Like many times when he built characters when I was there in the '80s, what he'd
Yeah.
do is he'd go ahead and he'd take a guy and he'd give him a gimmick that really resembled him in real life.
Mhm.
So it was easy for the guy to get in the character because, if the guy was a real jerk in real life, or the guy was a real nice guy in real life, or the guy, so those were the best days and the best characters is when you were close to what your real personality was. But
Yes.
for me, a piece of paper and to be someone else, forget it. And that's what Brett was telling me. Like, it was horrible. It was the most horrible night of his life. He said he had to read a piece of paper, and he says it was bad. It wasn't him.
The
Is that something you teach in the academy? Like, hey, you're gonna cut a promo, and we're not giving you anything, and you have 1 minute. Go.
What I tell them, they got 30 seconds, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
And what
30 seconds.
I tell them, the most important of all is when you come out of that curtain, you're in character, and you could never leave that character, because not for a split second. You can't be in the ring going around taking a bump and fixing your knee pad because it's not at the right spot. Your knee pad fell down a bit. If
Yeah.
you're fixing your knee pad, how could you be hurting your back if you're fixing your knee pad?
Oh, see, that's
so,
fair.
so,
Yeah.
so make sure that your gear fits you right, and make sure that when, if you're in a tag team, if your partner's in the ring, and if he's suffering, well, you're suffering too. And if he's looking good, that you're happy too. You can't be picking your nose while your partner's in the ring. You're out of character.
Yes.
And then from the minute you leave the curtain all the way to you close that curtain and you leave the arena or you leave the scene, you must stay in character. You must make everybody's got to believe that person, that character that came out of the curtain is really him. It's really that character all the way. So you can never leave your character. And but I don't know how it is today in the business. I just know that my academy, the way I teach the people, I give them advice. You know what the funniest thing is I have a lot of these wrestlers that wrestle differently today because wrestling has changed in the last 30 years. And every time that I talk to the guys that are meeting each other from West Coast to East Coast that have never met each other before in something, I offer them my service to go on Zoom like we are now, all three of us. And I said, if you guys want, I'll help you put the match together. Oh yes, Mr. Rougeau. Oh yes, that'd be good because I don't know why, but because I guess I have a little bit of mix of the way it is today and the way I think in the past. I think it makes a nice combination to have a great match.
It's also part of your family heritage and tradition that you growing up in the business, you would have been ingrained with how to set up a rolling arm leg lock. Like you would have been ingrained with what your uncle would have used as the finisher or to get ready for a finisher. So that's already in your head. It's been in your head forever. So those things would come naturally to you. I don't know if you know, we have one of our Facebook pages is called A Tribute to the Wild Man. I don't know if you know the Bear Man from Ontario.
Yeah. He used to work with my uncle and my father.
Yeah. And I met Chris Tolos once at a show.
Holy.
He's a really, really interesting guy. But tell a story. And he'd come out, and he was such a nice guy. He'd come out, and he was just a bastard, right? And he'd ball his fist up a lot, right? But tell a story. And Jesse and I have talked about using the word entertainment a lot now in wrestling because you pay your $20. It's like going to a movie. You're being entertained. We still love it. We love it like forever. I've loved it my whole life, but you're still being entertained. And when you can put family entertainment into the mix and have the guys do what you want them to do with their career and moving forward, it's all the way it should be, right?
Well, I made that comparison with the movie. That's like just because I always say you pay to go see an actor, you pay to be a part of the experience, right? You're in the IMAX to have that bigger screen, the comfier chair, right? You're paying for the experience. When I go to WWE, I know I'm not seeing a wrestling show. I'm seeing sports entertainment show. When I go to an indie show, depending on I'm seeing a wrestling show. Right? And I'll tell you, I went to a WWE house show, and then the next day I went to an indie show, and me and my sister both agreed that we had a lot more fun at the indie show because it's one, a wrestling show, two, way more personal. I find indie wrestling can be very personal and more intimate because these guys aren't like they're trying to get there, right? So guys like me who feed them and try to get in a break and be that little antagonist, right, in the crowd, just I'll take it too, right? And I'll help sell the two, right? Because I know what you're trying to do. So, but if you can plug those guys in too to help elevate, so it's going to be very interesting to see with a lot of the names that you mentioned today, especially that 6'9" guy.
You need to go on my YouTube channel and follow this, like wrestling-academy.ca. Follow this competition this year. If you want, you can go see last year's competition also. And you can right now and see it. Have fun with that. But just don't listen to the commentating because it's me and I'm horrible. Because because I don't know the wrestling moves and stuff. I'm doing more like wow and yay but
enjoying more than doing your job.
So much fun. But to be honest with you, this year, Jeremy Prophet's going to be talking with me, commentating with me. And so he'll know all the moves and stuff. It'll be a much better production this year. Last year it was a horrible production outside of the ring, but in the ring, it was awesome. If you guys want to go see some good matches, go on wrestling-academy.ca. This year, the production will be a lot better. And we've learned because it was my first year last year of putting this together. And Lord knows that you learn every time you start a new project like that.
Right.
There's so many things that you want to do better the next time, Hey, listen, at one point that was, it was so funny. And I'm such an old fashioned kind of guy there because, like when I was brought up, well, I had one guy called Kyle Zachary. He's a good friend of mine. He was a student of mine also. And about 25 years ago. And he's from Kanawak. He's like, so he's like an Indian, the reservation and stuff. And then, I'm having so much fun. I'm going like this and he's in trouble. I'm going, I said, well, maybe he shouldn't have danced so much, because it's raining a lot, and all that rain dance. And then the next thing, I got about 20,000 calls, from him saying, Jacques, you can't talk like that about the Indians. Like, and I'm going like, I'm only having fun, just he said, yeah, but politically correct. You can't do that anymore. Like, it's like at one point I told him, I said, because in French, when you take a hit is you prends un coup. But when you prends un coup, it has two meanings. When you prends un coup in French, that means you get drunk or you get a hit. So I'm going this. So I make a double sense phrase. I go like this, and we know Indians could take a hit. Like, and it was just a joke, but holy shit, so anyway, all this to say, I had a lot of fun last year, but I learned a lot so this year I'm going to turn my tongue 7 times before I speak, but it was fun. It's just but the matches, the talent this year, the caliber is so much higher and bigger that you guys will be, if you want to get a tease a little bit of last year, go check wrestling-academy.ca and just forget about the production. Just look at the talent in the ring, the content, and then you'll see that it's really something to look forward this year.
Sorry, Wes, I have to do it because you said last year you did AEW Dark, right? So my thing is Forbidden Door is coming and Dynamite is coming. So could there be an opportunity there where we see some Wrestling Academy guys maybe on Forbidden Door or Dynamite in Hamilton?
You never know. Nothing has been spoken yet. I let QT Marshall bring me what he wants to bring me. I'm not a guy pushing nothing. And you know what? I realize that sometimes when you push for things, they don't come. Sometimes when you're just in a position where you give, then people want to give back to you. So it's like, so that's the way I'm working with QT, and I'm just hoping that he keeps giving us gifts. Now he's coming to wrestle to Montreal for the first time against one of the losers of Wrestling Academy, that the ones that'll be eliminated. What a nice gift, you don't make it to the finals, but you have a chance to wrestle QT Marshall, a superstar. you know, and he's on TBS every week now. He's seen around the world. He's got a great angle going on now. He's got a great gimmick, and he's going to come to Montreal and wrestle you. That was in Wrestling Academy. So he gave us that gift, and if he gives us more, power to us. But I'm already so happy and than what he gave us so far. You know, when you think about 3 months at the Nightmare Factory with some of the 3 best teachers in the world, and he's giving that to us. He's giving that to my competition. You know, and plus they're winning $10,000 each, so they have the money to go to Atlanta to spend 3 months to get an apartment and to work and to be so it's right in their mouth, you know. And so thank you, QT Marshall. That's all I could say.
Jacques, one thing I was going to ask you: do you have a copy of this book?
Yes, I do. My Uncle Johnny. Great book, huh?
I can't read. I can get through it. My French isn't as good as it used to be. I can get through it. I was just going to offer it to you if you didn't have a copy of it, but.
I have it. Thank you much. Yeah, you want to get rid of it because you can't read it, but
it's got some. I can read it. It's a slow read, a very slow read. Just a little bit.
The Mountie always gets his way, buddy.
Yes.
The Mountie always gets his way. Okay.
Thank you so much for your time, Jacques. It's been just fantastic coming on with us and being with us. I really enjoyed speaking with you, and we've got so many pictures to show at the end. So I'll also send the pictures that we have that I have on to you, so you can check them out also.
You know,
also before we go, where do you get tickets?
Yeah,
you get tickets right?
clubsoda.ca.
Okay, good.
We're gonna put that up. So Johnny will put that up.
Yeah, put that at the bottom there if you want Club Soda. There's only 80 tickets left. So there's already 320 tickets gone out of 400. It's like a dungeon. It's incredible in there. So the place is on fire, but there's 80 tickets left. And West, I was going to go ahead and say, and if you have a chance there, you must cheer for Chad Daniels, who's from Winnipeg.
Yes.
You know, he's a great talent. He's a great acrobatic wrestler, and he's babyface. He impressed us a lot last year, and I think he's learned a lot also in Wrestling Academy. And this year he's going to come in more prepared. I'm thinking he's going to make it through the first round. I'm pretty sure of it. You know, I hope so for him. I like the guy. And the funny thing about him, I got to tell you about Chad Daniels, is last year when the whole competition was over with, the next morning, he was at the hotel and it was really cold out and stuff. But I got a motorcycle, a 3-wheeler. It's called a Can-Am there, like a Spider. You know, I got a bike, a Spider, and I brought him to the airport from the hotel, like a 20-minute ride. He was freezing as anyway. You know what I mean? He was freezing all the way to the airport, and he was in the back of my bike. But he'll never forget that ride all the way to the airport.
I did see him last summer wrestle at a show here. So yeah, it was quite good. And the chap out here, Danny Warren and Marty Goldstein, the guys who handle the guys, they all talked very highly of him.
Great drop kick. The kid has he reminds me of me when I was doing those drop kicks, and that's what impressed me the most. He's a beautiful drop kick, a nice baby face, and so I think it's going to be a great competition for him this year. And I'd sure like to see him wrestle QT Marshall at the end. You know, if he doesn't make it to the final, and I hope he makes it to the final, but if he doesn't, I'd like to see a match between a heel like QT Marshall and a baby face like Chad Daniels.
Yeah,
that would be awesome.
Yeah, Matthias is a good kid too. I've seen him wrestle in Quebec last summer. Hopefully next year we get XS Junior. I'm a big fan of XS Junior.
Yes, XS was there last year, and
but
his
son is incredible.
He didn't want to apply this year. He was amazing last year. He had different priorities or other priorities, but we really enjoyed him last year. You know, he needs to go to the gym a bit there, to be honest with you. You know, he's like 140 pounds wet, but you know, but I think in a couple of years from now, I think he did the right thing by not coming in competing against the 280 guys and 260 guys, and the competition level is very high. But he has some things that he needs to make better, but he's got so much acrobatic talent. You know, he was the only guy, XS Junior, that went off the balcony last year, 20 feet in the air, and did a dive off the balcony in the Club Soda. He absolutely mesmerized everybody in the place. It was like suicidal jump, you know, like holy macro. And there was 3 guys that caught him in the ring. But so yeah, I hope to see him next year in Wrestling Academy 2024. One thing I could tell you, if there is a Wrestling Academy next year, I got some big news to announce, you know, and I could say that it's a possibility that it's going to be North America. It's going
Wow.
to Mexico, United States, and Canada.
Wow, that'd be super.
That'd
Yeah,
be wild,
so,
actually.
so the talent went up this
Oh.
year. The talent went up this year, you know, and then but the talent's going to go up again next year, and then who knows
It
what.
just goes to show you, though, man, because you say like you got 80 years of family history, and here you are helping the next generation of wrestlers try to get there. So it just goes to show that really your family heritage. You're just like, yeah, okay, we're gonna help wrestlers. Like this is my blood. This is what I'm gonna do.
You know, if I don't know how many people are like that in life. You know, to be honest with you, I can only judge myself. But if someone asked me today, they came up to me and they say, Jacques, would you do it again? In a second.
Yeah.
I'd live my life again in a second. Just a little better and a little more humble. But
Yes.
I'd live it just like that again. It's my passion. It's something I wouldn't want to do anything else in life.
Good for you.
Wes would love to do it again just so he could experience having hair again.
So guys, thank you very much. And
Yes,
wrestling,
thank you, Jacques.
wrestling-academy.ca. Check it out. And it's starting May 7th at the Montreal Club Soda in Montreal. Get tickets if you're around Club or Ontario is not far. And you want to drive down and have a great night of wrestling. It's clubsoda.ca for tickets and have fun.
We have lots of people in Quebec that watch, Jacques. So, merci bien, très bien, et au revoir, et have a good evening.
And with that said, right, Wes? With that said, I'm Jess.
I'm Wes.
And we are the National Wrestling Clipping Alliance. And thank you for watching the NWCA podcast. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Check out our 5 Facebook groups, the National Wrestling Clipping Alliance group, Ontario Wrestling History group, BC Wrestling History group, Ric Flair tribute page, and the Wild Man tribute page. 4,000 members and counting, motherfuckers.
Yeah.
Just saying. Until next time, adios.
Ciao for now.
I'm Jess.
And I'm Wes.
I'm Jess.
And I'm Wes.
We are the National Wrestling Clipping Alliance. It's the NWCA podcast.
I love doing this, and I love you in a, cool wrestling history kind of way.
Hey, easy, man.